is Nikki Baird, and I also have with me Paula Rosenblum, and we are managing partners at Retail Systems Research. And today we're going to present findings from some new research that we have conducted around the store and Omnichannel. And we're calling this an Omnichannel store health assessment. And we did find in the course of this research that really only the strong are positioned to survive. But we do have also a lot of recommendations and a lot of insights for how retailers can become much stronger in their store health. So let's go through our findings. So first, we want to start with our new methodology, which is called START. This methodology is being applied specifically to the store today, but you will very likely see other areas of the business that are a focus of START from us in the future. But what we found is over the years, we have spent a lot of time looking at retailers through the lens of our BOOT methodology, which really focuses on the alignment between business strategy and technology investments, but does not necessarily go into a lot of detail for execution. And so we wanted to develop a new methodology that really helped us dive deeper into the execution side of the business. And we looked at store first because we just hear so much from our retail audience that the store is the part of the business that is currently the most challenged or that they're the most worried about. We also hear a lot of, everything is really important in the store. So how do I prioritize this? How do I focus on the things that are going to matter most that will help my stores survive? So we do expect to cover most functional areas in retail, but the store is definitely the most important today. Our objective is really to help retailers figure out where to begin with transforming stores, whether they're moving in the right direction, whether they're moving fast enough. I think that one is critically important. And then most important is how to find opportunities to transform faster and more efficiently. And I think a key area that we really wanted to focus on was realism. The retailers don't have a lot of margin to play with, and part of our mantra as a company is to be very, very pragmatic. So we wanted to make sure that the recommendations that we were making and the advice that we were giving to retailers was really based in a sense of what retailers are really able to execute in stores and how they could do that in a way that keeps them successful. So what we're presenting today is an aggregated view across all retailers. Our intention, though, is to provide a tool for individual companies to use so that you can go and take an assessment against this aggregated response and get an idea for where your stores fall and how healthy your stores are and ready for omnichannel and the increasing demands that consumers are placing on retailers in the future. And we'll have some information at the end on how you can access that. So what we're going to cover today is our research overview, so kind of why did we focus on this and what's the high level of what's going on in stores. And then we're going to talk about strategy, which is the S in START, for a moment in particular, because it was such a problem area that even though we do look at retailers by service model, and we'll go into more detail about what that means, one of the things that we found really quickly is that it didn't matter, it really didn't matter what kind of retailer you are. There's really a lot of disconnects out there between what retailers say is their value proposition to their customers and then what they say are their strengths that they're leveraging in order to deliver on those value propositions. So we'll cover that separately, and then we'll dive into the service model. And then within each service model, we'll cover strategy, tactics, an action plan, reworking processes, technology priorities, and then we'll sort of sum it all up at the end with some recommendations. But that's the letters of START right there. So if you're not familiar with RSR, we have been benchmarking the retail industry for 10 years now, and our mission in life really is to help retailers make more strategic decisions about their technology investments and to help technology providers who are selling solutions better position their products to meet retailers' needs. And I would say that the 4 things that are highlighted on here are the most important to us in terms of what we bring to the market: objective insights, and then pragmatic advice, and that pragmatism will hopefully be on large display today. And then extensive retail industry experience. We have all been lifelong retailers and been in the industry for more years than I would care to count. And also, we're relying on a deep bed of research. And actually, normally we would highlight a lot of that research when we talk to you about, what retailers are doing and what they need to do. And we do have, those aggregated results. But a lot of the value of the model and the methodology that we're going to present to you today is really actually kind of hidden from sight. So we've been benchmarking retailers about their store strategies for almost an entire decade, and we brought a lot of those insights into the point of view that we put into the survey that we developed for START. So from top to bottom, START really does reflect our experience and our expertise in the retail industry. So the START methodology, I kind of gave you a preview of what all the letters stand for, but S stands for strategy, and we actually look at 3 things. We look at what are the internal strengths that a retailer feels that they bring to market, and then we look at what is the core value proposition that a retailer brings to or offers to consumers. So what promises are they making consumers really from a brand perspective? And then finally we look at the service model, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but really it's sort of what volume do you expect to do, and what level of service do you expect to provide as part of delivering that volume. And then from there we go to the tactics, and so what tactics support the strategy, and we look at current processes, and we definitely look at that through the lens of omnichannel. So we're considering both how retailers can bring more of a digital experience into their stores, and we also look at how stores can actually bring to life more of that store experience from a digital perspective. And then from there, we sort of look at the alignment between those two, and we're able to develop an action plan. So any of those gaps that exist between strategy and tactics, we identify where those gaps are, and that becomes the basis of really how should the retailer change. And what's really important there is not just how should they look to change going forward, but finding the money. How are you going to pay for this? How can you do this in any kind of reasonable way given the margins that retailers operate with and the competitive environment that they currently are operating within? And then we go from there to kind of break those down into the 2 main components. So reworking processes, and of course there's an employee element in that as well, but we really look at what, as far as making changes go, what does that mean from a process perspective? And then we look at the technology enablers within that. So sometimes that means asking retailers to do completely new things, in which case they need to reprioritize their technology investments. And sometimes we're looking at the priority that retailers have already placed on their technology investments and asking them to realign those priorities. All right, so let's get into the research. So we started out strong with only the strong will survive, and we're not going to let off the gas pedal from that perspective. Stores have been in trouble for a long time, but the erosion has been kind of subtle at first, and it really was only until holiday 2016 where it became just painfully apparent that store traffic was flat or falling, or worse, dropping off a cliff, that mobile was winning in terms of customer engagement for the holiday experience, and that the retailer's store experience just is not doing enough to keep up. So, we really intend this to be a wake-up call. If you feel like you're doing all the right things for your stores, then unless you really are delivering the results that other retailers would be envious of, you're not doing enough. And the irony is that with all of those challenges, or with that context around this, stores are still a key contributor to retail performance. In fact, it's the strongest contributor to retail performance, especially if you are an omnichannel retailer. Online can be a challenging place for you to make money. Stores are where most of the transactions happen, and it's still where most of the profit is to be made. But the other challenge with stores is that they take a really long time to change. Most retailers I know could not completely remodel their fleet of stores, especially if they're nationwide or global, could not remodel their fleet of stores in less than 5 years. So at the rate of change that technology is driving consumer behavior, retailers don't have that long to figure out their stores. They really need to get moving now. So as I said, stores matter. We asked our respondents to characterize how stores contributed to their company performance last year, and 69% said that it helped their company performance. And another 25% said, it was, sort of break even. And really only 6% of respondents said that stores actually hurt their company performance. So, stores still make a lot of money in retail. All right, so let's talk about strategy before we get into each of the service models. So anytime you're looking at tactics or execution, even if you think your strategy is set and strong and great, it's still always worth a gut check. And I think one of the things that we learned in this research is that retailers really need this gut check when it comes to stores. I think a lot of retailers are assuming that their strategy and how that strategy is executed in stores is actually highly aligned, and the reality that we found is that they are not. So I said at the beginning that we look at 3 contributors to store strategies, and the first is the value proposition. It's the promise that retailers are making to consumers. Are you a lifestyle expert, or are you a low price leader? And then core competencies. These are the internal strengths, the strengths and advantages that retailers have internally that they can leverage to deliver on their promises. And then finally, the service model, how they actually deliver on those promises to consumers, and in this case, specifically through stores. Some of the things that we found is that retailers are overly fixated on price. That's no surprise. If you read any of our other research, you'll find that when retailers talk about their business challenges, consumer price sensitivity, consumer price transparency are all issues that tend very high towards the top of the list. But even more surprising for us is the fact that their core competencies seem to have no relation to their ability to deliver low prices. And in fact, some of the things that in the aggregate retailers said were their internal strengths actually can undercut on their ability to promise low prices. And then their service model often offers very little rationality in how their value propositions or core competencies can actually be delivered to consumers. Why would a low volume, high touch retailer who typically is luxury or high-end apparel, for example, why would they want to be a low price leader? So here's the summary of the results from the survey around value propositions. So the top 2 chief value propositions to the consumer, and we did ask retailers to kind of lifeboat and only pick 2, so you can't pick all 8 of these, was low prices and convenience, which for a lot of retailers is fine. If you're a high volume, low touch retailer, low prices and convenience make a lot of sense. But what was really surprising for us was the 6% at the bottom. Only 6% of our respondents, including the low volume, high touch retailers, said that one of their chief value propositions to the consumer was lifestyle expertise. And frankly, that's just shocking, especially if you're a branded, manufacturer, vertically integrated retailer. Your brand value is lifestyle expertise. There were far more retailers who took this survey who really should have said lifestyle expertise and actually did, and that was very disappointing. And then in terms of competitive advantage, so remember, low price and convenience were the value propositions that most retailers said were their value propositions to consumers, but powerful brand marketing and superior product design top the list as the top two sources of competitive advantage. And even in a scenario where a retailer is spending all of their marketing budget on promoting their low prices, I would argue that that's not powerful brand marketing per se. You're not talking to the market about how you are able to deliver low prices. You're just saying, I have this product for $3.95 and you should come buy it from me. And that to me is not powerful brand marketing. And yet a large plurality of respondents said that that was at the top of the list of a competitive advantage. And then in what situation would low prices and convenience as a promise to customers result in a retailer who wanted to focus on superior product design as one of their competitive advantages, as one of their core competencies? There's very, very few situations that I can think of where superior product design really is going to help you deliver on those value propositions. If you're going to invest in product design, you want to be able to recoup that through being able to have a higher margin that justifies that investment in product design. Some of the other things down at the bottom that were interesting, deep process analytics and metrics. There's cases where there are retailers for whom that should be valuable. If you're offering a value proposition of convenience, I would expect a retailer to want to be strong and be able to leverage deep process analytics and metrics in order to actually deliver on that promise of convenience, because you have to make sure that your processes are as convenient to consumers and efficient as possible. And clearly that was an area that very, very few retailers valued. So, and then finally, the third component of strategy is the service model. And we asked about three. So high volume, low touch. Those are your grocers, your high volume general merchandise kind of retailers. And then low volume, high touch, those are your luxury retailers, jewelry, high-end apparel, those kinds of categories of goods. And then high volume, high touch tend to be sort of what's left of the category killers, if you will. So consumer electronics, home improvement, pets, all of those retailers that used to be known as the category killers before Amazon basically came along and killed that term. So you can see that there's actually a fairly even distribution, especially given that high volume, low touch, when you're talking about CPG, fast-moving consumer goods being a large part of this, it's not surprising that it kind of fell out this way. And we were actually really glad to see kind of an even distribution here in terms of respondents to our assessment. But for the store, you can theoretically look at, the types of products that retailers sell as the lens. But honestly, when it comes down to it, it's really this service model here that is the promise that retailers are making when a consumer walks in a store. When you walk in a store, you can tell just by looking at it right away what kind of service expectation you should have. Is this going to be the kind of store where they expect to move a lot of goods through and I'm not going to get a lot of help at the shelf? The value proposition to me is more about making sure that the product's on the shelf than it is about somebody standing at the shelf and holding my hand and helping me make a decision. Whereas whether you're high volume or low volume, in a high touch environment, totally expect an employee to play a large role in helping me through my shopper journey when I'm in the store. And then, of course, low volume is a different standard of service, even from a high volume perspective. But that's kind of how these three service models break down. And so this is the way that we looked at the results. Everything that follows from here will focus on the service model first, and then we'll look at the results through the lens of that service model. But we wanted to make sure that you had kind of an understanding of why we did that and how many retailers fell into each of these categories. So wrapping up the strategy section, when we looked at combinations of value propositions and core competencies, we just found a huge number of disconnects, a really dismaying number of disconnects. You know, the retailers who promise low prices are primarily planning on supporting that through powerful brand marketing and superior product design, and that just makes no sense. A promise of convenience, they felt the retailers who said that they were making that promise of convenience, their top internal core competency was a strong merchandising function. And while, you know, you can make a case for merchandising playing a role in delivering convenience, you know, they're really an adjacent delivery method of convenience compared to the kind of service that a customer would get in store. Can you speed me through checkout? Can you speed me down the aisles? Can you make it easy for me to select products? You know, those are much more factors of convenience. And then conversely, those retailers who were promising convenience were not promising process analytics, were not able to or focused on process analytics or deep customer insights, both of which you would argue that if you're going to deliver on convenience, you got to make sure you understand what that means to consumers and whether you're capable of delivering that. But retailers did not cite those as internal strengths. And then retailers promising customer service did not see differentiated customer service as a core competency or deep customer insights. And retailers promising high product availability didn't see supply chain efficiency or agility as internal strengths. And so when we kind of went through this first part of the analysis, we just had to stop and take a breath because, you know, I think that retailers do assume that their business strategy and their stores are already aligned. And from our results, we saw right away that that is not necessarily a safe assumption for you to make. Consumer expectations have shifted very, very much over the last decade and more, driven by their own technology adoption. And part of the reason why stores are in trouble is because they have not kept up with those shifts. So if you're looking at your stores, the first question you have to ask yourself is, what am I promising to customers at a brand level, right, and at a marketing level? What am I promising to customers? And then you have to ask yourself, what am I leveraging in stores to actually bring those promises to life before you can even take that step of evaluating how well stores are actually delivering on those two things in the context of their service model. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paula, who will take us through that view of the service model.
Okay, so Nikki just went through this whole matrix of touch to volume. And in this instance, we're talking about high volume, high touch retailers, like what we used to call the category killers. Think of someone like a consumer electronics store, certainly Best Buy. I think we could argue that Apple is probably the highest high volume, high touch retailer that's in the universe at the moment, given the sales per square foot. Certainly jewelers can be like that. And so let's take a look at what we found here. And we found a better story than we did with low volume, high touch. We did find some gaps. I think of the three service model types, this was probably the best executed, and they have a real solid foundation to start from. So let's take a look. Strategy, we found the most inconsistencies in strategy, and we'll get into that in a minute, which is the value proposition, competitive advantages, and service models. I think Nikki gave you an overview of that in the summary. Tactics, we found pretty competent, actually, not too bad. Action plan-wise, we found there was a high leverage opportunities, and this is where we call out where retailers can find the leverage for making the change, and then the specific changes come out in reworking the processes. We found a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of innovation opportunity. And then finally, technology focused a lot around profitable fulfillment and what are the priorities for technology investments. So let's start and take a look. First, let's look at the value proposition. Customer service and high value, high touch. This is great news. 50% said that that was one of their two chief value propositions. Well, it certainly is. really the customer experience should be higher, but I could also say that customer experience is an outcome. It's an outcome of customer service. It's an outcome of product availability. It's an outcome of lifestyle expertise, for which these companies said they had none. Low prices. I understand why a quarter of respondents said that it was important value proposition. What you don't want to have happen is have these customers go off to a mass merchant instead, either a terrestrial mass merchant like Walmart or Target, or a virtual mass merchant like Amazon. Convenience is less important. Overall, this wasn't terrible. I think I would have liked to see more exclusive products, better product availability, and more lifestyle expertise. In any kind of high-touch environment, you want the customer to know that you know her. And apart from customer service in the generic term, there's not much here that tell us that you know who the customer is. I'm okay with the curated products not being so high because they tend to be a bigger box, a bigger footprint, and a broader assortment. But nonetheless, there needs to be more in here that tells the customer that you know who she is. So what are the competitive advantages? Somehow, brand marketing has risen to the top again. Now, I get that brand marketing is important, and I get that marketing is in ascendancy. And when you say the word Apple, and I'll use that example again, it's the most valuable brand in the world. So it's not a terrible thing. But if that brand marketing isn't accompanied by superior product design and differentiated customer service, what happens is it's a broken promise. Because we've always viewed brand marketing of all sorts, as a promise made. And where the promise is kept is where the customer comes to meet you, whether that be in the store or online. And so there is some disconnect in here. I would have loved to have seen stronger, superior product design, more differentiated customer service, stronger merchandising functions, and deeper customer insights, because again, the object of the game is to get close to the customer in the middle of a hectic environment. So there are some disconnects here. So we rated it inefficient. Too much focus on low price, not enough on customer experience or product availability. Now, in this analysis, we thought there might be too much focus on superior product design and not enough on differentiated service and deep customer insights. I might twist this just a little bit and say that if you have a superior product design, you will drive people into the store, because if the product talks to them, they'll at least want to come in and spend the time. So we still felt it was somewhat inefficient. Let's take a look at tactics when it comes to content. And you can see these retailers, again, do better than some of their counterparts. They are very strong on triggering consumer awareness of a need or a demand, because this is very much the I must have this so-and-so. Now, as they're exploring or engaging, the retailers start to get a bit weaker, and when they're selecting, not surprisingly, everyone, a strong plurality felt that their content to support shopping during the transaction phase was adequate. That's because at the end of the day, you're just checking somebody out. You're checking them out and having a conversation. And you can see what's most interesting here is how well these guys do in supporting shoppers during the post-transaction advocacy phase of the shopper journey. They're very strong here. And that's what drives this whole cycle of having them come back again. And those who survive in this environment survive because they're able to do that. Price may be table stakes now. I'm not sure, although, as I mentioned before, there's not a whole lot of price consciousness around certain electronic products. When they're hot, they're hot. But nonetheless, this notion of supporting content during the post-transaction advocacy phase of the journey is important. Going to use Apple again just because it's easy. And their Genius Bar is a classic example of a way that you're supporting them after the transaction. If you buy Apple Care, they're amazingly good. Companies like Verizon, believe it or not, and their high volume, they can be actually very high touch depending on how you engage with them. They're very good in the post shopper phase. So, you know, there are some, this group did very well in that area. Similarly with building community. These types of retailers, the high volume, high touch retailers, are able to connect people together that are people like me who like this product and to create events or services that put us together. Just as they have, as you can see, 50% events or services that help consumers enjoy or maintain the products that they've purchased. They're a little weaker on events or services that support and reinforce the primary value proposition, and events or services that educate consumers about product categories. I think that's because they're often single category stores, but you see they are better at educating consumers around specific products. So overall, I don't give this a terribly bad rating. I think it's pretty good. And then when we look at commerce, this is fascinating to me. Endless aisle, 75% felt that they do this very well. And these are generally pretty good-sized stores, so that's a very interesting story. And they're also 63% that they can conduct in-store and online transactions into one cart for the customer. Some numbers said that they could do a perpetual chart. Mobile point of sale was weak, and save the sale was very weak. I think their presumption was if we do endless aisle, we don't have to worry so much about save the sale. But I am not so sure that's true. It depends on how good your inventory visibility is. So our analysis of tactics was, as I said, this group is pretty competent. We'd like to see more focus on content to support the explore and select phase of the customer journey. We'd like to see more focus on events and services that support those early steps as well. We know that there's been some progress in omnichannel commerce, as I mentioned, but we do believe there needs to be more. But these, on the whole, these stores in general, and we would need to do a personalized assessment to let you know if you, or you can do your own personalized assessment based on what you heard. In general, it's a pretty competent tactical environment. So what's the action plan? What can we do to improve? Training and pay seemed to be at the right level, so we didn't feel a need to change here. We did feel that more labor was needed. I know this was one category of store where labor was pulled out of the chains, and I think that they've been rushing to put payroll back. When Hubert Joly joined Best Buy, one of the first things he did was he reallocated the hours that were used at the door to check receipts by a security person into putting one more body into the store to actually be selling and working with customers. That's a creative way to do it. There's other ways we talk about in the report that we wrote to do it. You know, interesting ways like using MSOs. There's different things you can do, but definitely there still does need to be more labor in the form of payroll. And like with other types of retailers, we need to find a way to reduce employee turnover. So think about retention strategies. And I know that the subject of employee turnover has been around in retail forever. And I know that it's not always an accident. It's not an accident that retailers have high turnover, even though they bemoan it, because the retail model is built on a transient workforce that we don't necessarily have to pay fringe to. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that that's a sustainable model going forward, and we really need to think about, if we're not going to retain them in the store, we have to at least do some career pathing for employees. And in my 20 however many years in retail that I was a retail practitioner, I knew that the only area where retailers focused on retention strategies was when they were building a bench for store employees. But you might want to also think about not just a bench for store employees, but career pathing right back to the home office. Because nobody knows retailing like a guy who's worked in the store. They just don't. So let's take a look at training investments. This is a tough one for us overall in general, but I will say that I think that this particular group of retailers did a nice job. You can see that for new store, we've got here the dark green is new store associates, or the left if you're colorblind. The middle green, the lighter green, is existing store associates, or the second one over if you're colorblind. And then finally, the one that is very light green, or I probably gray if you're colorblind, is specialist store associates. And you can see for new store associates, it seems like the plurality spend between 11 and 30 hours training them, and another 33% spend more time than that. That's great. For existing store associates, we were actually quite excited. Now this is per year, by the way. This is not per month. This is per year. So think about a company that spends less than 10 hours a year on their existing store associates. What's the chance those store associates are going to stay around? The answer is somewhere between slim and none. Now when it comes to specialists, we have a whole other story. And when it comes to specialists, you can see that they want to spend a lot of time training them, because these are the go-to, whether it's the gurus or the geniuses or the guys who help you put the fittings together in Home Depot or Lowe's. These are people that a lot of time is spent investing in. And these are good things as long as they stay. So, we weren't unhappy with what we saw here. We thought it was good. And we thought the pay strategies were pretty good, quite frankly. You can see that there's base pay plus permission, significantly above minimum wage. Above minimum wage, I was surprised that straight commission was so low. But I would imagine that's a function of what the people are doing in the store. What's the willingness? Where do we think is going to happen in terms of putting the number of bodies in the stores? As you can see here, there's a recognition that they cut it way too lean. If you go back a decade to Home Depot under Bob Nardelli, the store was cut so lean it was embarrassing. So these retailers, more than others, have been putting payroll back into the store and are continuing. There's no bell curve here, or no semblance of even looking like a bell curve here. This is clearly, we're 3/4 are going to increase and 1/4 are going to remain the same. I might suggest to you, with all respect, think about training your existing employees more and creating retention policies for them more, so that you increase your payroll not with headcount, but you increase your payroll with knowledgeable staff that can truly help your customers. That's the best kind of expense you can make, rather than just hiring more transient people. And that goes back to the subject, as I just said, of don't let them get away. If we take a look at employee turnover in this sector, you can see that, this is across all sectors, I see, okay. So here you can see high volume, low touch has one level. We're talking high volume, high touch here. These numbers are too high. 75% turnover is too high. 75 to 100% payroll. Half of the employees in a high volume, high touch environment are going to leave in a year. That's just a lot. That's wasted money on your part. And so you have to find a way, I think, to have retention strategies that keep them there. In high volume, low touch, ironically, the turnover is less, and yet the activities that they're meant to be doing are much less strategic. So there's really a disconnect here that has to be kind of worked on and focused on. This is completely inverted, at least in my point of view, and it needs to be better for across the board. So we have some innovation opportunities here, because don't forget, this is high volume, high touch, and we want to think about innovation centers, incubators, and labs, pop-up stores where you can test more curated assortments, different store concepts, different kinds of customer service innovations, and focus content and community around product exploration and selection. These are the processes we'd like to see changed in general. Technology investment-wise, Omnichannel enablement focused on save the sale and efficiencies in locating and promising profitable inventory to meet demand. We worry that endless aisle becomes this little bit of a chaos in terms of dancing around where might the inventory be, where can I find it. And we really do believe that better omni-channel investments can make it more efficient to promise profitable inventory to meet demand. Mobile point of sale here is also important, partly because it helps create the connection between the consumer and the shopper and the employee. And also it'll help and facilitate saving the sale and also pop-up or event-driven interactions with consumers. Content like employee expert blogs to support retail positioning here as customer experts is a really good idea for a technology investment. And this is not a heavily loaded technology investment particularly. Just creating content that allows your employees the time to create blogs and get their names out there, which really juices people. I mean, I've been an analyst for 15 years and it still juices me when I get a Google alert with my name on it. So, you know, if you can have an employee expert blog and show them the Google alert with their name on it, you will get a seriously juiced bunch of employees. So let's take a look at the summary of investments. We felt that there was summary of recommendations. We felt that there was a little bit of inefficiencies in the strategy. We strongly recommend, and I mean, this is an industry-wide problem, that we focus less on price, more on the customer experience and product availability. You can focus less on superior product design, although sometimes that can see you through a lot, just for short periods of time, and more on differentiated service and deep customer insights. Tactically speaking, we felt already this service model was pretty competent. We believe that investing in content to support the front end of the customer journey would be a really good policy. The back end, it seemed like they were really pretty good. And invest in services, in events and services to support these steps as well, and keep pushing on omni-channel. Action plan-wise, talked about it before, talk about it again. Training, pay, and incentives, make sure they're in the right place, because better that you pay an existing employee more than that you just keep rotating through employees. You're going to end up spending the same amount of money. And that's why there really is some imperative around solving the retention problem. My friend Greg, who's now a competitor over at IDC, he once did an exercise, and I've done it multiple times since. He asked a room full of executives, he said, how many of you started your career in retail, either selling in a store or in a distribution center? And invariably, and I've done this since, 90% of the people in the room raised their hands. And the reasoning why is usually, well, it's easy, it's transient, no problem, no issue. But the truth is that retailers get first crack at the biggest talent in the industry, at the biggest talent in the country, and they just let that talent slip through their fingers. In this kind of environment, if you can solve that problem a little bit, you will have a business model that will stun you. In terms of reworking processes, we see innovation opportunities. Focus on innovation. Think about innovation centers and incubators and labs. Think about pop-up stores to test new products and new types of assortments, new store concepts. Smaller box concepts are starting to really come into popularity now, and these will also help you with content and community. Technology, it's all about profitable fulfillment, profitable omni-channel, mobile point of sale, employee content, expertise, and community. These are the best things that high volume, high touch retailers can do to improve their in-store experience and their in-store models. Nikki, back to you.
Thanks, Paula. So we do hope that you found this review to be valuable, but you may be thinking to yourself, based on my service model, you know, I wouldn't have answered it that way, or that's not how we do it, or that's not what we're focused on. And so being aware that there would be that kind of reaction, we really designed this whole assessment and this whole methodology around the idea of really getting down to the individual retailer. So for anybody who thought that this was valuable, but that you're sort of curious to see how your own store health would be assessed, we have 3 different ways for you to potentially participate and find that out. So the first one is the easiest one. You too can take the survey. So it's exactly the survey that we used to present the results today. What we presented to you was just the aggregated results of a bunch of individual companies who participated. But what we would present to you as a thank you for taking the survey and for enriching kind of the aggregated results, we would also return to you a PowerPoint file of your personal evaluation, insights, and recommendations. And we've been doing these for a couple of months now, and they tend to fall between 45 and 60 slides depending on where your assessment takes us. We're getting down to where we can turn these around faster and faster, so about 3 weeks before you would get one back. The only downside for you is that our surveys usually take about 10 or 15 minutes, but in this case, the survey is longer. I mean, we're asking you harder questions, and we're asking you to really think about your stores and to provide an honest assessment of where your stores are in regards to how it supports the shopping process and where your technology investments are and how you're investing in people in stores, all of that stuff. So because we're delivering an individual personal results, we ask upfront for you to identify your email address and the company that you're taking this survey for, which can sometimes be a little bit off-putting. But if you get into it and you decide, you know what, I don't have the time for this, or this is requiring too much off-the-cuff knowledge for me, and I don't have all of the things I need to answer these questions, which, if you know your stores well, should not be the case. But if for some reason you don't complete the survey, you will not receive your PowerPoint assessment. So you do have to complete the survey all the way to the end in order to get your results. And we put the link right here so that you can actually go and take this survey yourself. And if you want something that's a little bit more in-depth, we sort of joke that the survey is a little bit kind of like those Cosmos surveys in the magazine, what boyfriend is right for you. It only gives you so much. So if you want more, we can do more. And we have 2 ways of doing more. One is sort of a lower level of personal engagement where we would do a week of preparation and then a half-day workshop. And what we would ask for is actually that your executive leadership team all participate in the survey, because it's not just about what the person responsible for stores sees. It's not just what the CEO sees. It's really how well the executive team has come to a consensus on what stores are there for and how well the organization is supporting their stores or enabling their stores. So we ask for multiple leaders to participate, and then what we do is we present back those results as an aggregate for just your perspective on your company, and then we also identify areas where there was a lot of consensus and then areas where there was not a lot of consensus about any aspect of START, whether that's the strategy, tactics, action plan, and then how that breaks down into reworking processes or technology initiatives. And a lot of times where things really get hamstrung is that you know what you need to do, but you can't decide what order to do it in. And having that alignment all across START actually really helps kind of get that priorities to just kind of fall out. So when we show up for a half-day workshop, we do a detailed analysis of the shopper journey gaps. We do a detailed discussion of what your opportunities are. And then we wrap that up with a discussion of the technology roadmap and where anything might need to change or be reprioritized in order to support what you're trying to achieve with stores. And then we have a larger consulting engagement that's called Starter, and that one is much more in-depth. We need about 4 weeks of prep. There's a full-day workshop where we're going to ask your executive team to participate, and it basically delivers everything of the store health assessment workshop plus more. So some of the things that we'll do besides the survey is we'll come in and we'll interview your executive team. We'll also, there's technically 5 C's in the C's that we cover. So we cover 3 in the survey. We cover content, community, and commerce. Context is the fourth C, and that's implied because that's the store. The store is the context. But then the fifth C is the customer insights. And so we would include customer insights as part of the assessment. That's not something that you get when you take the survey. And then we would do a much more detailed and in-depth assessment of your technology roadmap and how well it's aligned. We would also look more detailed into an assessment of measures and KPIs. So a lot of times the concerns are things like how are you incentivizing store employees to fulfill orders that come from outside the store? What are the metrics that you're using to evaluate store performance? So we'll bring a perspective on those assessments as well. And then what's included with that is a 6-month advisory where we sort of come in, we do the workshop, we give you the recommendations, and then 6 months later we'll come back and do sort of a course correction if needed. So we'll kind of come back and see how things are going and what's sticking and what's not, what's working, what's not, sort of a health check on the health check, if you will. So if you're interested in any of these programs, we have contact information for our business development person, Linda Wolf, and we would be happy to go over any of these in more detail. And with that, we want to thank you for taking the time to spend with us to talk about the health of stores. As we said when we got started, we knew that retailers were not moving fast enough, and we really wanted to come up with some way of giving them a tool set that would help them move faster. And one of the most difficult things to do is to come up with an action plan in a time of high uncertainty. And right now there is a lot of uncertainty in retail and around stores in particular. So it's just important to make sure that you have whatever certainty you can find. And we really came up with the START methodology in order to provide retailers some of that certainty. So if you have any questions, you are always welcome to contact us, and we encourage you to engage with us in any of these channels that we have on the screen right here. And thank you for your time.